The Cultural Revolution. Revolution, Reaction, and Reform. Edited by Ziad Abdelrazik.
Now crack well-armed Chinese forces.
Introduction. Let's go back to ancient China 1960. China was in famine and great economic deprivation. Many people lost their homes, jobs, and even families. Mao Zedong, a council leader in China, wanted to change this, so he launched what we call today the Cultural Revolution. In the mid-20th century, China went through one of the most dramatic social movements in modern history, the Chinese Cultural Revolution. The Chinese Cultural Revolution was a political movement launched to assert control and capitalist influence. This sent China into chaos, violence, and economic disparity. This legacy reveals the potential of political fanaticism and the lasting impact of mobilization on a nation's social world. Beginning in 1966 and ending in 1976, the revolution was launched by Mao Zedong, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. The common goal was to preserve communist ideology. On August 8, 1966, the Chinese Communist Party passed 16 points outlining the goals of the Cultural Revolution. However, what began as a political campaign quickly turned into chaos. Schools closed, families were torn apart, and artifacts were destroyed. Young people, known as the Red Guards, were encouraged to challenge authority and attack anyone seen as disloyal. Causes. The Chinese Cultural Revolution was driven primarily by political power struggles. After the failure of Mao's earlier campaign, the Great Leap Forward, China suffered massive famine and economic collapse. As a result, Mao lost influence within the Communist Party, while more moderate leaders gained power. Mao was deeply worried about the rise of revisionism, especially after the Union rejected Stalinism and pursued more moderate policies, which Mao saw as a betrayal of communism. To get his dominance back, he used the youth of the Chinese to encourage them to go against old ideas. These would be later come to known as Red Guards. Fearing that China was moving away from true communism, Mao wanted to reassert his control. By mobilizing students and calling the movement a moral duty, Mao turned ideology into a dangerous weapon. Propaganda. Propaganda was one of the most important tools used during the Cultural Revolution to control how people thought and acted. The government spread Mao Zedong's ideas everywhere through posters, songs, newspapers, and loudspeaker announcements that played in cities and villages each day. Here is one melodious song cover that was played about Mao, Red Sun in the Sky. Mao's image was shown as powerful and heroic, which made many people view him as someone who could not be questioned. The little red book, filled with Mao's quotes, became a symbol of loyalty and was read in schools, workplaces, and public rallies. Students were taught to repeat these quotes and use them to criticize teachers. Propaganda also created fear, because anyone who disagreed with the messages risked being punished or labeled an enemy of the revolution. Over time, the constant repetition of slogans annoyed Chinese. Fear. The Cultural Revolution left a lasting sense of fear in the people of China. Even after the most violent years ended, many citizens were afraid to speak their opinions or trust others, because anyone could have been accused of being disloyal. Families were often divided, and friends or neighbors sometimes reported each other to authorities. People remembered the punishments, public humiliations, and arrests that happened to those who were accused, which made them cautious for years. This fear affected daily life, from how people talked to each other to how they behaved in schools and workplaces. Many people carried the memories of this fear for the rest of their lives, and it shaped Chinese society. Impacts. The Cultural Revolution had a huge impact on the lives of ordinary people in China. Schools and universities were closed or turned into for political training instead of learning. Millions of families were affected as parents, teachers, and neighbors were accused of being enemies of the revolution and sometimes punished or sent to labor camps. On May 16th, 1966, the May 16th notification was issued by the Chinese Communist Party. Many people lost their jobs, their property, or even their homes. Children and teenagers were forced to join Red Guard groups, which changed family relationships. Events and actions. Once the Cultural Revolution began, chaos spread rapidly throughout China. Red Guards, mostly teenagers and young adults, were encouraged to publicly humiliate teachers, officials, and even family members. People were accused of being counter-revolutionaries for owning books, practicing religion, or questioning authority. On August 18th, 1966, Mao Zedong appeared publicly with Red Guards in Tiananmen Square. In fall 1966, the Red Guard movement peaked with mass attacks on teachers, intellectuals, cultural artifacts, and historical sites. Rival Red Guard factions began fighting each other, leading to armed clashes in many cities. Effects and consequences. In July 1967, the Yuhan incident occurred. By December 1968, the start of the Down to the Countryside movement happened. Schools and universities shut down, leaving an entire generation without education. The consequences were devastating. Millions of people were displaced, imprisoned, or killed, and countless families were permanently scarred. China's economy stagnated, scientific research slowed, and society's trust collapsed. Intellectuals and professionals were targeted, creating a long-term shortage of skilled workers. Even after the Cultural Revolution ended with Mao's death in 1976, its effects lingered for decades. Conclusion. Today, in 2026, the Chinese Cultural Revolution stands as a powerful reminder of how ideology, when taken to extremes, can devastate an entire nation. What was intended to strengthen communism instead caused suffering and cultural destruction. Understanding the Cultural Revolution is important not only for learning Chinese history, but for recognizing the warning signs of political extremism everywhere. It shows how propaganda, fear, and blind loyalty can override reason in humanity. Today, it is a sensitive topic in China, but its lessons are universal. By studying this period, we honor those who suffered. Thank you.